Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, instructor for Andy 150, and this is Module 3, modeling a low poly dagger and a battle axe. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. So some of you guys did that last time, maybe you didn't, and that's why some of you are losing your textures. If you don't create a project and all the folders and you don't put your textures in the right folders, then that'll be a problem. So let me take you through that process again. So we're going to go into File, we're going to go into Project Window. Okay, File, Project Window. And what we want to do is click on New. It's going to be a new project. And I want to, and you should call it your first name, last name, and then Annie 150, Module 3. And this is going to extend through Module 3, 4, and 5, okay? So you can do that if you want to. So basically parts 1, 2, and 3. And so there it is, and it's going to create all of these folders. The ones that we're going to use the most is the scenes folder. This is where all your scenes are when you create your models and stuff. That goes into scenes. And then whenever you render something, it goes into images folder. And then whenever you save your textures, it goes into this folder. Okay, so textures go into source images. And go ahead and click on accept. Alright, so now you've created a folder with all of those folders. Okay, you've created a main folder and then folders inside. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick. If you went to the default directory, it's going to go into documents, and it's going to go into Maya, and it's going to go into projects, and you can see that I've got Andy 150, Module 3, 4, and 5. And so now I'm going to go in here, and you can see that I've got my images folder, which has nothing in it, and then my scenes folder and my source images folder. Okay. So the thing that you're going to do is you're going to download all the reference images that I have zipped up on the canvas, okay, for Module 3. And so these are all the images that I've given you, so please make sure you take all of these and copy them, okay, like this, copy, and go ahead and go into documents, or wherever you put mine. You might have put it on your hard drive, which is fine, and but at home, if you're working on a desktop and you're staying at home, you're not carrying stuff around, you're not going back and forth to school, which I know you're not going to be doing, at least at JCCC, and then open up source images and paste it. So this is probably where you're going to put it. So these are all the images that I've provided for you, and they're very nice images, and we'll take you through those real quick. So the first item is going to be the battle axe, and the most important one is called the battle axe model reference. Okay, now we're not going to get to the battle axe because when I show it to you, you're going to see, wow, there's a lot of cool things that are detailed on it that I'm not sure how I could model that. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the dagger. That seems to be the easiest one. So let's go ahead and double click on that one. And this one is called the Dagger underscore model reference. And you can see that I've got it lined up. I had to go into Photoshop and line it up. It was like angled. So I lined it up perfectly. The hilt, if it looks kind of funny, is off. Okay, it was poorly made. Okay, so we're gonna actually do a version of it made correctly. Okay, the hilt is off center, believe it or not. I mean, that's really poor craftsmanship. So we're going to move that over a little bit. Okay, so that is going to be the dagger, and then the battle axe, which is really cool. It's hard to see, but if we zoom in a little bit closer to that, you can see some really cool leather strapping. So it helps with the grip, right? Because your hands sweat and things get kind of slippery, so this is a great way of adding that. So we've also got some tricky parts like this. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do those kind of parts, and we've also got pieces that are like rivets that you can see that attach. And I realize this is not really meant to go out and go crazy with. Obviously, you're not going to be running around swinging this around. So it's basically not made for battle, obviously. It's made for show, to look at. It would never hold up, I can guarantee you that. But you know, it's still fun to recreate. Okay, so that's the idea, and I'll show you how to do all those straps and how to get those to look really nice. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so you're probably wondering why we're looking at a diagram and all the parts, but I think it's really important to familiarize yourself with the object that you're actually going to create. Now, I don't expect you, like if we're going to model a car, to know all the parts of a car, although it is important to know certain parts of a car that you're actually going to be modeling. So it's really interesting and to kind of pick apart and what are the parts of a sword or a dagger. So we've got basically the pommel, the grip, and the crossguard, which makes the hilt. And then we've got the different parts of the blade that you can see here, and that creates the blade. Okay, and then we have the thicker part, which is a lot stronger, and then the weak part is the point, obviously. And then we got the scabbard, the locket, and the chape. So with these pieces, it's really important that you we kind of pick apart how we're going to model this. Now, there's some misconception out in the modeling community from especially beginners, and I'm not exactly sure where this is coming from, but they feel that they need to model the entire structure out of one piece. That's not the case. In fact, good modelers model each piece separately and attach them just like you were to do that in real life. So if you want something to look realistic, you obviously have to break it up into the smaller pieces. Okay? And that's the same thing with a car. When I build or create my cars, I create each panel, like the side panel, the front rear panel, the door, the window shield, you know, and the front grille. That, you know, every part is separate. It's not all just one piece. And when you make something as one piece, it looks really novice. It doesn't look professional, and it looks like somebody modeled it, and it just doesn't look right, because you need to have those breaks in the model to make it feel and look more realistic. Okay, with that said, so now you know the parts, and that should be this image should be in your packet that I've given to you on Canvas, so look for that. And we've also got a couple things in here too as well. I've got another one that kind of shows the same thing, and then I've got another image here kind of showing the different shapes. Okay, and so it's really kind of cool, the differences that you see in these shapes, which is kind of fun. And then let's go ahead and get started with modeling. So let's go ahead and go in here, and let's get back into Maya 2020. Alright, starting from scratch, from a blank canvas. So let's go ahead and go to view. Now we're not going to go into the perspective view. We want to make sure we're in the front view. Okay, not the side view, the front view. And go to view, image plane, and import image. Now we're going to start with the dagger first. The axe is a little tougher to do, so we're going to go ahead and do the dagger. We're going to click on Dagger Model Reference, and let's go ahead and open that up. And you can see that comes in pretty large, which is fine. You can just leave it as is. Okay, and what we want to do is we just want to move it to the center, and it may be off a little bit. Move it to the center the best you can. And you can see, again, I think I talked about this earlier, that the dagger is not centered. It was poorly created. But we can fix that through modeling. It's not a big issue, even if the hilt is off, and we've got some issues with the handle being too far over to the left-hand side here. That's something we can correct in the modeling part of it. Alright, so where do you start with a dagger? We can see that some of the parts now swords are different because they're a lot longer, so they have to be made a little bit differently. So this is pretty easy. Really, we got 4 parts to create: the pommel, the handle, the guard, and the blade. We got 4 pieces. Okay, so that's how we got to think about when we're going to model this. So let's go ahead and move this off to the back a little bit. We don't want it right in our way, and let's just leave it in the center. That's just fine. It's not going to hurt anything. If you want to bring it up to the top, you sure can. I'm just going to leave it right in the center here. I'm going to do Control A to get it off of that, the attributes, and I need to get off that, and then we're going to go into the layers. So I'm going to put this in a layer after I moved it back, create a layer, okay, with the object inside. I'm going to rename that layer to be Dagger reference. Alright, so just ref, right? That's good enough. Alright, so let's go ahead and save that. And we're going to go ahead and reference that, so you make sure you have it on R. Okay, P means preview and V means visible, so we can turn that off and on now. If I want to select it now, I can't select it. It's not going to get in the way. Also, what's in the way right now is all the grid marks. So I'm going to go to Show, and I'm going to turn the grid off. Okay. Now don't forget all this stuff, meaning that, oh, I can't select it. I want to select my object, my background image, and I can't. Well, you have it on reference. Okay, you have to turn the reference off. A lot of us students that are new to this, to Maya, realize, and another thing you have to watch yourself is if you put something in a layer and you turn it off and then you save it that way, it'll be saved turned off, and when you open it back up it'll be nothing there, and you're probably going to be freaking out going, oh God, oh my gosh, where's my image, or where's my object in here, and you put it in a layer. So make sure you check your layers first, turn everything on, and then you can go from there. That way, yeah, don't freak out or anything. It's probably in a layer somewhere. Okay. Another thing I want you to kind of start using is the Windows outliner. Okay. The outliner shows you everything that's in your scene. So let's say I can't grab anything in my scene. Clicking on the image plane in the outliner basically shows you everything, so you can click on it there. If you can't select it here for some crazy reason, it's probably because you have reference on, right? Because I can select it now. But it will select it even if it's referenced in the outliner, which is kind of cool. Okay, so it kind of overrides the display of the layer. Okay, so let's go ahead and click off, and let's get started. Now there's a couple things we need to think about, and when we're looking at the kind of decorated piece up on top, that we're going to model this low poly and then turn the low poly into high poly by adding edge loops. So this is no different. So we're going to continue on working like that. Okay. The only time that I would even consider going into ZBrush and starting from scratch in ZBrush, I'd never do a low poly, obviously, but when you do high poly modeling, I would only do organic surfaces in ZBrush. I just don't think their tools, even though their tools are better, for hard surface modeling, it takes way more time to create a hard surface model in ZBrush than it does Maya. There are some people though that are extremely skilled in ZBrush that can create some hard surface models that are actually pretty impressive, but I still think Maya is way faster when it comes to tools and polygonal modeling. ZBrush, I still consider that to be more sculptor friendly, more artist friendly as far as that goes. This is more technical work that we're doing, and when you get into working with ZBrush, you're going to really like it. It's pretty fun. It's pretty awesome, but it's an interface that's very difficult to move into and out of. So anyway, I use ZBrush all the time. It's a lot of fun, but I only use it for organic stuff and finishing my characters up. But for this kind of stuff, it's no problem doing this with Maya. So where do we start with this? Do we do 3 cylinders together and merge them together? We could. Do we draw it out and then you know, add the edge loops on there? We could. So where do we start? Okay. Normally what I like to do is I start with a cube. Okay. And so there's different ways. I'm only showing you one way. It's not the only way. And if you feel confident and comfortable in another way, that's perfectly fine. I'm just trying to show you the fastest, easiest way to get from A to Z And I'm just going to select those vertices up on top. I hit the W key, so I just marquee selected all those. Hit the W key. Now I'm going to move this down, and you can see that I can start. You can see that starts right about here. So go ahead and move that over, and move this over so it just kind of matches what's lined up. And we can and if it's off a little bit, we can always center everything when we're all finished. Okay. So then I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to move it over like that, and this piece over here, move it over here. Now you can see there's some perspective here. You have to be super careful with perspective. Remember, we talked about that before. And in fact, this has got perspective on it on the handle here. So I'm going to move this back a little bit. You can see that that perspective kind of goes over. So I need to bring that back, something like that. Okay. And you can see that's where we can start. Alright, so with that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the perspective view, hit the F key, and that kind of focuses on that piece there that we have. And I'm going to right click over the object and go to face mode. You can see that I'm doing that. Right click over and go to face mode and click on the top face. Okay? So with that done, I'm going to go to the front view again, and I'm going to do Control E. Okay, you can also go into your tool modeling toolkit. I really don't use this. A lot of people like to use it, so I'm going to show it to you. So I think you're at a point where you can make a decision on you know what your preference is. And if you're happy to go into the modeling toolkit, basically you can go into object mode, you can go into vertex mode, edge mode, you know, and then you can go into, you know, multi-component mode. So you've got everything here. Okay, I prefer to do this. I just right click and go to vertex. I can right click and go to face. I can right click and go to edge, and I can right click and go to multi. Everything's there, right? So I can either go up to here and select these every time and then go back, or I can click over the you can see why I prefer this. Okay, because it's right there in front of me. That's what's called the marking menu. I'm a power user, and that's how I do all my work. Okay, and it sounds really awesome too when you can say I'm a power user. Anyway, just never mind. Anyway, so we're going to go back to the modeling toolkit, and you can choose that. You can do that too as well, whatever you want to do. We've got soft selection, which is really cool. You can click that on and off. And I've got a video tutorial on that I'll post to make sure you guys have that. That's pretty cool. And then we've got, you know, we've got the combine, separate, smooth, boolean. We got some tools in here, right? They're not all the tools, obviously, but they put in the most useful tools, I think. Okay. All right. So with that said, okay, I don't use a modeling toolkit, so bye bye. I tend to, like I said, I'm a power user, and I tend to just go and use the marking menu like you see here. Okay. So I'm going to go in here. There's no right or wrong way. It's just a personal preference, and that's mine. And so if you want to use the toolkit, go ahead and open it up, and you can still follow along because I'm going to do the extrude, so you can just hit extrude, and it does the same thing. Okay? And I do to extrude, I do hotkeys, so Control E, right? So it's really up to you what you want to do. All right. So I tend to model without. Sometimes I use the manipulator tool that comes with the extrude, meaning that when I hit extrude, it comes up with this manipulator. And I may not, I think I did show you, or there was a tutorial that shows you how to use the extrude manipulator. So you can click on the outer ring, which gets you to this. You can click on the arrow, which allows you to move it, right? You can move it up and down. And you got that scale, where you can scale but you have to move it away from itself. See how it's kind of weird? You have to move it away from itself for it to work, okay, when you do scale. I'm going to go back, side view. We're going to work on the front view. And you can see that we've got to go ahead and select these vertices. And I'm going to go ahead and extend it out just to kind of follow along with this, okay. And let's go ahead and go back into face mode. We're going to knock this out pretty quickly here. So I'm going to go Control E now that I've talked myself to death, and then I'm going to go ahead and just scale that out. Now you don't want to use the middle button here, because that will do scale in all directions. We don't really want to do that right now. Okay, we're going to keep it flat. So I'm going to go ahead and go Control E, and I can move it up. Okay, and if I want to, I can continue to, if I can click on the cube for scaling it, if I want to use the manipulator, or I can just hit the R key and scale it this way. It's really entirely up to you how you want to do that. And I'm going to do Control E and then keep moving my way up, hit the W key, move it up. And here I just keep it kind of flat. I may just kind of scale it just slightly, very little. Control E, move it up, and then R, and scale it in. This time we're going to scale that in a little bit like that. Okay. Now don't worry, we're going to just kind of follow this side because it's not perfectly square, right? So Control E, and then W key, move it up, and then continue on. Okay. We want all quads though for sure, right? Control E, and then move it up, W, and scale it in. Okay, this gets a little tricky here because I need to pull that down a little bit, and we may want to go ahead and scale that out just a little bit. Just kind of follow this one over here. Let's just follow this one right here. And to do this right, I probably should move that down and have this a little closer, and then move this out a little bit more, and then move this up to kind of follow that edge there. Okay. Alright. And then I'm going to extrude, Control E, move that up just a little bit, and scale that in like that. And you can see here that we're going to come back up again. Okay, then we'll go ahead and smooth that up just a little bit. There we go. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and do extrude again. And move that up. And this time we'll go just a little bit up like that, and just kind of scale that out a little bit like that. And extrude up like that, scale it out a little bit, extrude up, kind of keep that shape. Want to keep that shape going. Extrude up. We're just hit Control E, and you guys know how to do that now. It's going to go up a little bit, and now we're going to scale that in just a smidge, just a little bit, keeping that kind of round shape. Control E, screwed, up we go, and then Control E, move that up, and scale that in. And as we get to the top, we're going to add more divisions here. Control E, we're not going to scale it, we're not going to push it up too far, just scale it in a little bit like that. As we go into the top, Control E, and just move that up just so slightly. And again, we're just kind of finishing it off here. Control E, and move it up. Okay, so this isn't going to be much here. Let's extrude that into the top like that. Okay, so you know it's not perfect, and again you can zoom out a little bit and you can finesse it, right? But what I'm going to do is, which makes more sense to me, is that we cut this in the middle, okay, and we break it off in half. That makes a lot more sense to me than to continue modeling like this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with it, the object selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and right click over and go to Insert Edge Loop, okay? So in here we're going to go ahead and insert an edge loop all the way across, right in the middle if you can, as close to in the middle as you can, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to take half of this off. So you can see that I'm going to go to face mode, and I'm going to go ahead and select this side over here, okay, and I'm going to delete it, okay? That makes sense to me, right? So now I'm going to go in perspective mode. You can see what we got so far, all right? So everything's still quad, believe it or not. Nothing is triangulated. What we're going to do here is I'm going to turn the grid back on. So I'm going to go to Show and then turn my grid back on. And this is important because I think we need to kind of move things over. Things are not quite right with this. Okay, the blade is almost centered perfectly, but look at the rest of it. Okay, so I need to bring this over just a little bit. Okay, like that. And what I'm going to do is I am going to snap these vertices in the center over to the side. Okay, now to do that, even if I click on snap, you can see that some vertices are all over the place. They're not really snapping properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a trick, and I think I've shown this maybe to you guys before, that'll line those up, because you can see this one down here is not aligning properly, and I want them all to align perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into and double click on the move tool. The move tool. Double click on that. And that opens up that setting, and you can go into common selection option, move snap settings. Let's click on that, and click off retain component spacing. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on grid snap, and I'm going to move this over to the side and then move it back again. Okay, now you can see that this lines up perfectly. Okay, I use this little technique and trick all the time when I want to line things up, especially if I'm cutting them in half like this. Okay, alright, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and reset this again, reset tool. Okay, and that's done. So now all I have to do is go in here and just kind of finesse this so it doesn't look so bizarre. To do that, I'm going to go into shading and go into X-ray, and this allows me to see things a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to go into vertex mode and just start tweaking these vertices around. Now notice that I need to take off the grid snap, so I'm going to go in here and just kind of move that around, move this one around, just kind of give it a more round shape. It's really oblong and very strange looking here. Okay, and so it just takes some tweaking. And again, I'm not going in here and doing this, right? I'm in here just moving it because I want to keep these lines pretty straight. Okay, so I'm just trying to get a nice curvature, right? Another thing, if you really want to get this pretty close to perfect, I mean, not that it's really important to get perfect, sometimes it's good not to get things perfect all the time. What you can do then at that point is going here, if you want to have more of a round shape, because this isn't really round itself, is to go in and create a primitive cylinder, right? Or sphere, but we're going to do a cylinder and just rotate it around towards you. Okay, and go into the attributes and just type in 90 in here. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and move that up. You can see that now we can go in here and shape this like this, like that. Okay, and let's see, let's kind of take a look at what we've got here. So you can see the shape that we have underneath here with this object here, like that, and I'm just putting it up to this other one, and you can see how close you are, and we're actually pretty close. I mean, it's off a little bit, but not too bad. Okay, I can make it just a little bit bigger and just move it around, just to make sure my shape is pretty round. And if I'm not happy with that, I can always go in here and make those changes, right, in the shape of my object, right? So if I click on this, you can see that I can see this guy underneath. Now, a lot of times it is hard to see, but I can go in there and just kind of make those changes. Now you're going to have to, again, marquee select, there we go, and move those around. There you go. And that can help you keep that shape round even though your reference is not, if that's what you want to do. It's really up to you, obviously. You're the artist. So I'm going to try to make that as round as I can. And then I'm going to go to the next one here. Let's go back into object mode. And let's move that back up here. Okay, so also like to have this as round as I possibly can too as well. Again, I like when objects are round or rounder, so I'm going to put that up here, And let's take a look at this. So we're off a little bit on here too as well. And if this happens to you where you're actually selecting your object, then you happen to get that selected, just Control Z back and right click over somewhere else and then go into vertex mode and it will work. And it's hard to tell where the other one was. Okay, there it is, right? And let's go ahead here, vertex, and just kind of move that around like that. I'm going to move these in. I think that's where the worst part is, right here. And then the rest can be just kind of moved around. And this can help you just stay within that shape. There we go. So you can see that's a lot more round. And it's going to look a lot better when you're all finished. Okay? There we go. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. That just was a guide. So now you can see how I can go about doing round objects pretty accurately without having to guess. Okay? So there's that part. That's great. Alright, so we've got that top part done. I'm not worried about thickness just now. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move our way down the handle. Okay, and we want the handle to fit within this object here, because you can see that handle it's not perfectly round. Okay, it's got to fit your hand. So if you put your two fingers together, your index finger and your thumb, and you make a circle, okay, you notice that it's not really a perfect circle. Okay, so we're going to create that shape there in this one right here. So I'm going to go in here and click on the cylinder, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. And the cylinder again is 20. And for nowadays, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. We don't need anything lower than that. Most game engines can handle something like this, so I'm not too worried about going any lower than that. So we're okay with that. So we'll go ahead and just kind of thin that out a little bit, right? Like that. That's like when I put my thumb and my index finger together, you see that shape, don't you? And that's kind of the shape that a handle will have to fit your hand. So I'm going to go ahead and move that up and fit that into place here. Here we go. Alright, so now we're just going to go up here, and that's centered properly. Let's go ahead and for this one I don't need to really worry about whether I need to cut it in half or not. I mean, I suppose I could if I wanted to, and that's fine if you want to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave it the way it is and just take the top part and just scale the whole thing in. Now when I do that, it's going to mess everything up on here. So what I want to do is, if I scale this in here, okay, and if I go from the middle and do that, it's going to scale everything. Okay, what I don't want to do is do that. I want to just do this, okay, on the side like that and scale that in. Okay, now again, you got to understand that that handle is way off. It was built, incorrectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and just follow this guide right over here, how wide it should be. Okay, now if we don't feel that's correct, then we can just make adjustments with that. Let's see where we're at with that, because we do need to have it about the same size as this one. So let's go in here and again, here we go, and scale that in like that. Okay, seems a little thin, I know, I get it. Let's go ahead and go to this one here, and we're going to go into this side over here and scale that in a little bit like that. Okay, alright. Okay, so that seems a little thin, right? We can make changes to that if we need to, and make this a little bit wider, so we can add a little more width to this if we want to. So let's go ahead and make that a little bit wider. Now notice it's kind of moving that over here like that. So what we want to do is we want to move that pivot point. If we see that happening, and we notice that pivot point is scaling and scaling this way too, what we want to do is hit the W key and then hold the D key down. Get grid snap on, which is up here. Okay, hold the D key and just move that over and snap it over. And now we can hit the R key, right? And we can scale it out a little bit more like that. And what's happening is that we're scaling this out too, and that gives us a little more freedom to now, you know, kind of scale this out too as well. Okay, so we're going to scale that out as well like that. There we go. And that looks a lot better. Okay, we're kind of following this edge right here. Go down, and we're going to move this up. We need to keep that. Let's go ahead and turn off grid snap up there, and we're going to keep these sections pretty close together. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start up here, and we're going to go ahead and scale these in. That's not quite right. There we go. And so we can get that nice shape, and we're going to follow that line all the way down. Okay. And I'm just going to extrude. Go into the perspective, probably be the best way to do this. And you can see we kind of lost our shape, didn't we? Kind of lost our shape on there. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I want to start off with a nice shape. So let's go ahead and fix that, and just make sure we get that shaped about the right way. That looks pretty good. And once that's done, we're going to go into face mode, and we're going to go ahead and use the paint, okay, tool here. Let's go ahead and click on all these now. If you have it too big, the brush too big, it'll spread all over the place. So it's going to hold the B key down for Bob, B for Bob, and just kind of just paint those and hit the Q key. And look around, make sure nothing else is selected. And from here, we can go ahead and start extruding and then moving it down. So Control E, and then W, move it down. We're following, so we're going to kind of scale that out just a little bit, E, and move it down, and just continue, and kind of keep it about the same distance whenever you do these sections, okay, as you go down. Control E, W, and just kind of, you know, scale those out just a little bit. Control E, W, and do that all the way down, as you can see. And Control E and W. Okay. Until we get to a point where it stops and then kind of goes back in again. So Control E. We're not there yet. Control E, W, and there it is, right there where it kind of goes back in. This will be the last one. And then Control E, W, and then we move down, and you can see that now you see that it's kind of going in. So now I'm going to scale that in. There we go. Control E, W, and scale that, and Control E, W. Let's go to the bottom there, and let's kind of go into this object a little bit like there, and scale that in. Okay, perfect. Great. So that looks good. I'm happy with that. Let's go in here and see what that looks like. Alright, not too bad. Alright, it's not perfect, but it's not too bad. We can make adjustments later. Alright, so let's get these parts. Alright, so now we've got that part. Okay. Now, because these are intersecting, do you need to keep the faces on the top? Probably not. You'll have to keep the faces there. So whenever something goes inside of another object, you can go ahead and delete the faces on the top. And any faces that will never ever be shown by the camera. Now obviously you can't take the faces on the bottom off. You would probably say to yourself, well, I can take that face off, right? No, you can't, because the camera could see that because there's nothing really covering it. Okay, even though this object's covering a little bit of that one, doesn't mean that you would take that face off. Not that one. This one right here. Okay, you don't want to do that. But on top here, because it's intersecting, you should be fine. Right. So let's go ahead and let's stop this video. It's a little over 30 minutes long, and maybe 40. And this is a good place to stop. So go ahead and save your work. What I would do is whenever you save your work, go ahead and go to object mode and select all the pieces that you have, and just delete by type history. Okay. And I would also freeze transformations, because you got all this transforms in there. So let's go ahead and freeze those. There we go. And that looks great. So I think we're good. Now you see all those little lines in here. That's easy to fix. What you can do is go in there and go to right click over it and go to edge and select all the edges. Okay. hold the space bar down and go to Mesh Display and Soften Edge. Okay. And that's what happens when you actually extrude an object. It gets kind of like this part, like faceted. So I'm going to do the same thing with this guy right here, and just select the inside pieces, not the outside pieces, the inside, and do the same thing. Edge, Mesh Display, Soften Edge. There we go. So now we've got a nice looking piece here. Looks nice. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go in here, File, Save As. This is my first save. You can call this just Dagger and Start. Okay. And _A. Hopefully you're saving more than I am. You probably should have saved like every 10 minutes, and I'm saving for the first time. I can afford to live dangerously because I've done this a million times, and if I wasn't explaining, I'd probably be done already. But the idea is that you're not experienced enough to go too long when you're saving. So save, and save in a sequence so you can go back. A lot of you have already told me that the saving as a sequence has saved you, and some of you have complained that I forgot to save in a sequence, so now I had to start over. You know, so anything can get corrupted, and if it does, there's nothing I can do from my end, and there's nothing you can do. There's some things I could have you try, but if something goes totally wrong, you might have to start from scratch if you didn't save an earlier save. So save as a sequence, whether it be 0, 1 or A, B, C, but 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. Save in a sequence so you can go back and not lose everything. That's really important. Alright, with that said, go ahead and save. Right? Okay, and we'll see you back in part 2.